She mistook a millionaire CEO for her taxi driver. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The night air outside the downtown hotel was thick with the sound of car horns and the glow of neon lights. A line of taxis idled at the curb, their meters ticking, drivers leaning on the steering wheel with tired patience. The revolving glass door swung open, and a young woman hurried out, her arms clutching a sketchbook worn at the edges. Her name was Emma Brooks. She was 26 years old, a waitress who worked double shifts to scrape together enough for rent on her one-bedroom apartment. Her shoes were worn thin, her second-hand coat missing a button, and yet there was a spark of determination in her brown eyes. She had just finished her late shift and was desperate to make it home before her landlord knocked again with warnings she did not want to hear. She waved a hand toward the line of yellow cabs, but in her rush she pulled open the door of a sleek Blacktown car parked at the curb. The leather seats gleamed under the street lamp. She slid inside quickly, brushing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "Please," she said breathlessly, "can you take me to East Side? I really cannot afford to be late again." Behind the wheel sat a man in his early 30s. His dark suit was crisp. His tie loosened just slightly after a long evening. His name was Liam Parker. He was the chief executive officer of a multi-million-dollar tech company. But in this moment, he was simply a man caught off guard by the stranger who had mistaken his car for a taxi. He turned his head slowly, studying her flushed cheeks and the way she clutched the sketchbook like a lifeline. He opened his mouth to correct her, to explain she had entered the wrong vehicle. But then her eyes met his, wide with exhaustion and a hint of fragile hope. Something in her expression silenced him. Instead, he rested his hands on the steering wheel and said evenly, "East Side, you said?" Emma let out a long breath of relief, nodding quickly. "Yes, thank you so much. I promise it will not take long. I just need to get home." Liam shifted the car into gear. The city lights stretched across the windshield as they pulled away from the curb. For a moment, silence filled the space between them, broken only by the low hum of the engine and the muffled shouts of pedestrians outside. Emma glanced sideways at him, her nerves spilling into words. "It is kind of strange, isn't it? Talking to a driver like this. But I guess you are probably used to hearing people's stories, right?" She laughed softly, embarrassed by her own rambling. "Well, mine is nothing glamorous. I am a waitress at a diner on 10th Avenue. The hours are long, the pay is short, but it covers most of the bills. And when I have a little extra time, I draw. Someday I want to have my own gallery. Crazy dream, I know." Liam's grip on the steering wheel eased. He watched her reflection in the side mirror, the way she spoke with unfiltered honesty. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him without measuring their words, without calculating how his wealth might benefit them. She shifted the sketchbook on her lap and continued nervously. "Do you ever have those nights where you wonder if you are stuck? Like no matter how hard you push, you are still standing in the same place?" Liam glanced at her, his jaw tightening. He knew that feeling well, though for different reasons. To the outside world he was powerful, untouchable, surrounded by success. But inside, the weight of constant expectations and empty relationships pressed on him like stone. For the first time in a long while, he did not want to correct the mistake. He did not want to end this ride. Instead, he pressed lightly on the accelerator, guiding the car deeper into the city night, listening as Emma's voice filled the quiet. She had no idea the man she thought was her taxi driver was one of the most influential chief executive officers in New York. She had no idea that her simple mistake would set into motion a story neither of them could walk away from. Emma Brooks pressed her back against the cracked door of her small apartment and exhaled. The building smelled faintly of fried onions and old paint, the kind of scent that lingered no matter how many windows were opened. She tossed her second-hand coat over the chair, slid her shoes off with a sigh, and dropped her sketchbook on the coffee table. The weight of the night clung to her shoulders. Her apartment was one room with peeling wallpaper and a window that overlooked a fire escape. The radiator clanged loudly, but it never gave off enough warmth to chase the cold from the air. On the counter sat a stack of unopened bills. Rent, electricity, water, all lined up like accusations. The landlord had already knocked twice this week with the same warning. Pay by Friday or you are out. She sank onto the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her roommate, Jenny, peeked out from the kitchen corner, laptop balanced on her knees. Jenny's hair was pulled into a messy bun, her expression caught between concern and teasing. "That bad?" Jenny asked. Emma groaned into the pillow. "Worse. I sat in the wrong car and talked to a total stranger, like he was my driver." Jenny's eyebrows shot up. "Please tell me he was not a creep." Emma shook her head, cheeks warming at the memory. "No. He was actually nice. Quiet. But I made a fool of myself. I rambled about my life like an open diary." Jenny smirked. "Sounds like a rom-com setup." Emma groaned louder, burying her face. "If I am lucky, I will never see him again." But even as she said it, she knew she was lying to herself. Something about the stranger in the black car lingered in her mind. His calm eyes, the way he had listened, even though she thought he was just a driver. She pushed the thought away and grabbed her sketchbook. Flipping through pages filled with quick strokes of pencil, her fingers slowed over one unfinished drawing of a small gallery space. Wide windows, bright light, people stopping to admire her work. It was her dream. Someday she wanted to hang her sketches on real walls instead of tacking them to peeling plaster in a cramped apartment. But dreams felt like luxuries she could not afford. The alarm on her phone buzzed. She had a double shift in just a few hours. She dragged herself to the tiny kitchenette, opened the fridge, and stared at the bare shelves. Half a carton of milk, 2 eggs, and a jar of peanut butter. That was all. She closed the door with a sigh and poured herself a glass of tap water instead. Across town, Liam Parker sat alone in his penthouse suite. The glass walls stretched high above the glittering New York skyline. From this height, the city looked silent, peaceful, like a miniature world under glass. Yet Liam felt only emptiness. He should have been reviewing contracts, preparing for another round of meetings. Instead, his mind kept circling back to the girl who had mistaken him for a taxi driver. She had talked freely about her struggles, about paying rent, and dreaming of opening her own gallery. No one in his world spoke like that. People around him measured every word, calculated every smile. But she had been unguarded, honest, even when embarrassed. He leaned back on the leather couch, loosening his tie. For the first time in months, he had laughed without forcing it. It unsettled him, the way the memory of a stranger could pierce through the heavy armor of his daily life. Meanwhile, Emma curled up on the couch with her sketchbook balanced on her knees. She traced lines with a pencil, adding details to the gallery drawing, even as doubt gnawed at her. Rent was due. Bills piled up. Shifts at the diner left her drained. But as the pencil moved across the paper, she let herself dream for just a little while. The night outside pressed against the thin window glass. Sirens wailed in the distance. Emma set the sketchbook aside, pulled a blanket over herself, and whispered into the dark, "Someday." She closed her eyes, unaware that the man she had mistaken for her driver was staring out his penthouse window at that very same city, thinking of her. Neither of them knew that their worlds were already on a collision course, and that one mistake would not be the last. The morning light spilled across the diner's wide windows, streaking the floor with pale stripes. Emma balanced 3 plates on her arm as she moved quickly between tables. The breakfast rush was relentless. Orders rang out from the kitchen, the hiss of bacon on the griddle, mixing with the murmur of conversations and the clatter of mugs. She forced a smile as she poured coffee for a couple in the corner. Her shoes pinched, her wrists ached, but the smile never slipped. This was how rent got paid. This was how she bought sketch pencils and blank pages when she could. On her short break, she slid into a booth by the window and opened her sketchbook. Even 5 minutes were enough. Her pencil moved fast, sketching a simple line of people walking past the diner. She shaded the folds of a coat, the stoop of a tired back, the reflection in the glass. She captured what she saw, quick and rough, but alive. A soft voice broke her focus. "That is good work." Emma startled and looked up. Standing by the counter was the very man she had mistaken for a driver only nights ago. Liam Parker. He was dressed more casually this time. No tie, no suit jacket, just a gray sweater that somehow still looked expensive. Her cheeks flushed. You are not supposed to be here. I was passing by, he said with a half smile. Thought I would stop in for coffee. Is that a crime? She shook her head, embarrassed. About the other night, I am really sorry. I thought you were a taxi driver, I remember. His eyes glinted with quiet amusement. It was the most interesting ride I have had in years. Emma groaned softly, covering her face with her hands. Please, do not remind me. I made a complete fool of myself. Oh, Liam leaned against the booth, studying her sketchbook on the table. You did not. You spoke honestly. That is rare. Her hands dropped. She frowned, unsure how to respond. No one ever praised her honesty. Most people dismissed her chatter as nervous energy. Yet here he was, a stranger, looking at her sketches like they mattered. Do you want to sit? She asked hesitantly, sliding the sketchbook aside. He nodded, sliding into the booth across from her. The space suddenly felt smaller, charged. Emma tucked her hair behind her ear, trying not to stare at the sharp lines of his face. Why are you really here? She asked. Liam considered before answering. Maybe I wanted to see if you were real. Sometimes one conversation is enough to stay in your head. Her chest tightened. She did not know what to say, so she laughed awkwardly. Well, I am real, and I am broke, and I serve coffee that will probably taste like motor oil. He chuckled, the sound low and warm. Then pour me a cup. She slid out of the booth and returned with a steaming mug. He took a sip, winced slightly, then smiled anyway. Terrible, but I have had worse. For the first time all morning, Emma felt her shoulders loosen. She sat across from him again, and for a few minutes, the weight of bills and late rent vanished. They spoke about little things. Her favorite spot in the park where she liked to sketch. His vague tech work, which he kept deliberately undefined. He asked questions and listened, really listened, in a way most people never did. When her break ended, she gathered her sketchbook, reluctant to leave. Liam slid a folded napkin across the table. Written on it was a simple line. Keep drawing, do not stop. She looked at him, surprised. He just nodded, stood, and slipped out the door. Emma stared at the napkin, her pulse racing. She did not know why a man she barely knew had such an effect on her. But deep inside, something whispered that this was only the beginning. Across the street, Liam paused on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. He had told himself to forget her, to move on. But watching her laugh, seeing the light in her eyes as she spoke of her sketches, he knew he would come back. Neither of them said the words out loud, but in that simple exchange, a napkin, a sketchbook, a shared moment, they had already planted the seed of something that would not easily fade. The week passed in a blur of double shifts and long nights. Emma told herself that she should not think about him, the stranger in the black car, the man who had shown up in her diner and written a message on a napkin. Yet every time she opened her sketchbook, her eyes drifted back to that folded scrap of paper tucked inside. Keep drawing. Do not stop. The words followed her like a quiet echo. On Thursday afternoon, rain drizzled over the city. The diner was slow, and for once Emma's shift ended on time. She wrapped her scarf around her neck and stepped outside, sketchbook under her arm. The park was only 3 blocks away, a small patch of green with benches that looked out over a pond. She liked to sit there, to draw, to breathe. As she rounded the corner, she froze. Sitting on her favorite bench, sheltered under an umbrella, was Liam. He looked completely out of place in the gray drizzle, his tailored coat draped across his shoulders. He was not staring at a phone, not scanning papers, but simply watching the ripples on the pond. Emma hesitated, then walked closer. Do you always wait in the rain for strangers, or is this just my special treatment? Liam's head turned, a smile tugging at his lips. I was hoping you might show up. She narrowed her eyes playfully. How did you know I come here? I did not, he admitted. But you mentioned a park where you sketch. I thought maybe I would get lucky. Emma shook her head, laughing softly. That is not how luck usually works for me. She sat beside him, placing her sketchbook in her lap. For a while, they said nothing. The rain pattered against the umbrella above them, the city noise muffled by the damp air. Finally, Emma opened her sketchbook and began to draw, her pencil moving in sure strokes. Liam leaned slightly, watching the lines appear. "You really do see the world differently," he said. She shrugged. "Drawing makes me feel like it matters. Like maybe the things most people ignore are worth remembering. And who told you it did not matter?" Emma paused. Her father had once promised to hang her first painting in the family living room, but he had left before that could happen. Her mother had worked 2 jobs until illness took her away. After that, no one had time for dreams. Dreams did not pay rent. She did not answer. Instead, she sketched faster, hiding her thoughts in lines of graphite. Liam studied her face, sensing the silence but choosing not to press. After a long pause, he said quietly, "If you could have one thing, no limits, what would it be?" Emma laughed without humor. "Easy. A small studio of my own. Nothing fancy, just a space with light and walls wide enough to hang my work. A place where I could breathe." Liam's eyes softened. "Then do not give up on it." She scoffed gently. "That is easy for you to say. You probably have 5 rooms you do not even use." He smiled faintly but did not correct her. She still thought he was an ordinary man working in some vague tech job. The truth sat heavy on his tongue, but he swallowed it. If she knew who he was, everything would change. For once, he wanted to be seen as a man, not a bank account. The rain eased, and the sky turned a pale silver. Emma closed her sketchbook, stretching her arms. "I should head back before I catch a cold. Thanks for the company again." "Emma," he said suddenly. She stopped, turning back. "Yes?" He hesitated, then simply said, "I would like to see you again." Her heart skipped. She tried to mask it with a shrug. "Well, the diner is open 7 days a week." He chuckled. "I was hoping for something other than burnt coffee." Emma bit her lip, then nodded. "There is a cafe around the corner from here. Tomorrow at 6? "I will be there," Liam replied. She walked away with the sketchbook clutched tight against her chest, the warmth of his words lingering long after she disappeared into the city streets. Liam remained on the bench, watching her figure fade into the crowd. For years he had been surrounded by polished conversations and careful lies. Tonight, for the first time, he felt something different. He felt alive. Neither of them knew how fragile this connection was, or how close the truth waited to shatter it. But for now, in the quiet rain of a New York evening, it was enough. The small cafe smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries, a comforting mix that wrapped around Emma as she stepped inside the next evening. She tugged at the sleeve of her second-hand sweater, glancing around nervously. For a moment she wondered if he would really come, if maybe the strange bond she felt was only in her imagination. Then she saw him. Liam sat near the window, a mug in his hands, his coat neatly folded on the back of the chair. He looked up as if he had been waiting for her all along, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "You came," he said. "I said I would," Emma answered, sliding into the seat across from him. Her heart thudded in her chest, but she kept her tone steady. The first minutes passed in easy conversation. They talked about the cafe's mismatched chairs, about the rain that seemed never to stop, about books they had half finished. Emma found herself laughing more than she expected. Liam listened closely, asking questions, encouraging her to keep talking. When she grew quiet, he leaned forward. "Tell me more about your drawings. Do you ever show them to anyone?" Emma shook her head quickly. "They're just sketches. I am not trained. It is just something I do to stay sane." "Sanity is worth protecting," Liam said softly. "May I see?" She hesitated, then pushed the sketchbook across the table. He opened it carefully, turning each page as though it were something fragile. There were street corners, diners, faces she had glimpsed in passing. Each drawing alive with detail, each line pulled from the heart of the city. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. "Emma, these are not just sketches. These are windows into how you see the world. And it is extraordinary." Heat rose to her cheeks. "You do not have to flatter me." "I am not," he replied firmly. "Promise me you will not give this up." For a moment, she could not speak. No one had ever looked at her art with anything more than polite dismissal. His words sank deep, stirring something she thought she had buried. Later, he walked her home. The city streets glowed under the orange haze of street lamps. Emma hugged her sketchbook close, glancing sideways at him. Why do you care so much about me drawing? Liam's steps slowed. He could have told her the truth then, that he was a man who had more money than time, that he was desperate to hold on to something real. But he only said, because the world needs people who see beauty, especially when things are hard. Emma stopped at the worn brick entrance of her building. Thank you, Liam. For tonight. For everything. Oh. He smiled, though there was a shadow in his eyes. Get some rest, Emma. We will meet again soon. As she climbed the stairs, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She did not know why he had chosen to spend time with her, why a man like him cared about a waitress with overdue bills and fading dreams. But she could not deny it anymore. His presence was changing something inside her. And upstairs in her apartment, by the dim light of the radiator lamp, Emma opened her sketchbook once more. This time, when her pencil touched the paper, her hand did not shake. The night of the charity gala arrived with all the glitter and noise of the city. Emma had never stepped foot in a place so grand. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers, the walls lined with gold trim, the air heavy with perfume and laughter. She smoothed the borrowed dress that Jenny had insisted she wear, her fingers trembling against the thin fabric. Jenny, who had managed to secure 2 guest passes through a cousin, whispered as they entered, "Do not gawk too much. Just act like you belong." But Emma could not help it. She felt like a child who had stumbled into a dream that was not hers. Her eyes darted from table to table, catching glimpses of men in tuxedos and women in gowns worth more than a year's rent. She clutched her small purse, wishing she had stayed home. Then the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Liam Parker, Chief Executive Officer of Parker Technologies." Emma froze. The room tilted beneath her feet. The man stepping onto the stage, tall and commanding in a perfectly cut suit, was no struggling tech worker, no ordinary man. It was him, the same man who had carried her sketchbook, who had walked her home, who had told her not to give up. Gasps caught in her throat. Jenny grabbed her arm. "Emma, are you all right?" But Emma could not answer. Her heart pounded, her stomach twisted, betrayal rising like bile. The applause thundered around her, but in her ears there was only silence. On stage, Liam smiled politely at the crowd, delivering his speech with calm authority. Yet his eyes searched the room, landing on her for a fraction of a second. His expression faltered, just slightly, before he recovered. Emma turned away, her hands trembling. She felt sick. Every word he had said to her replayed now with a different weight. He had known all along who he was, and he had let her believe otherwise. Jenny whispered urgently, "You know him?" Emma's voice cracked. "I thought I did." As the gala continued, Emma slipped out into the hallway, her breath coming fast. The marble walls reflected her pale face, her wide eyes. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady herself. Moments later, footsteps echoed behind her. "Emma." She turned. Liam stood there, the polished image of wealth and power, but with a raw urgency in his eyes. "You lied to me," she whispered. "I never meant to," he began. "You let me pour out my life to you. You let me think you were someone else. Do you know how humiliating this feels?" Her voice shook, but the anger beneath it was sharp. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Emma, I wanted you to see me, not the title, not the money, just me." But she shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "Then you should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Emma turned away, her heels clicking against the marble as she walked down the corridor, leaving Liam behind in the glow of the ballroom lights. For Emma, the dream had shattered. What had begun as a mistake that felt like fate now felt like the cruelest joke. And as she disappeared into the night, Liam realized he might have lost the only person who had ever seen him as more than his wealth. Emma's footsteps echoed against the wet pavement as she left the gala behind. The night air was sharp, colder than before, and the city lights blurred through the tears in her eyes. She pulled her coat tighter, fighting the sting of humiliation that clung to her like a second skin. Every word, every laugh, every quiet moment she had shared with Liam now felt like a performance. By the time she reached her apartment, her chest hurt from holding back sobs. Jenny trailed after her, trying to understand. "Emma, wait. Maybe he had his reasons." Emma spun around, her voice raw. "His reason was that he is a liar. He let me believe he was someone ordinary, someone like me." And the whole time he was a millionaire chief executive officer standing above the world. Do you know what people will say if they find out? That I was chasing his money, that I was another waitress looking for a way out. I will not be that girl. Jenny fell silent. The truth hung heavy between them. Meanwhile, across town, Liam sat in the back of a town car, his tie undone, his jaw set tight. The speech had gone perfectly. The gala had been a success, but none of it mattered. He saw Emma's face when the truth hit her. He had seen the light vanish from her eyes. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. And then came the headlines. By the following morning, tabloids and gossip sites had already begun to circle. Someone at the gala had snapped photos of Emma, storming out of the ballroom. The captions were cruel. Mystery waitress, storms from gala, gold digger caught? The words burned as Emma scrolled through them on her cracked phone screen. She wanted to throw it across the room. Instead, she shoved it into her bag and went to work. At the diner, whispers followed her. A coworker raised her brows knowingly. Customers stared too long. Emma forced herself to keep moving, to refill coffee cups and wipe down tables, but her hands shook. When her shift ended, she walked the long way home, trying to calm the storm inside her. Yet everywhere she turned, there were posters of Parker Technologies, Liam's name shining in bold letters. She could not escape him. That night, Liam tried to call. Then he showed up outside her building, waiting in the shadows. When Emma saw him, she stopped short. "Please, Emma, just let me explain," he said. She shook her head, her voice low but fierce. "You do not get to explain away a lie that big. You had every chance to tell me who you really were. Instead, you let me walk blind while the world laughed behind my back. Emma, it was never a game. I needed someone who could see me without the mask. You were that person," Liam pleaded, his voice cracking in a way she had never heard before. But Emma stepped back, pain etched deep into her face. "Maybe you needed honesty, Liam, but so did I." She turned and disappeared inside, leaving him standing alone on the cracked sidewalk. Behind her door, Emma leaned against the wall, heart pounding. Betrayal and longing battled inside her chest. She could not deny the connection they had shared, but she also could not forgive the deception. For the first time in years, she had allowed herself to believe in someone. And now, all she felt was emptiness. Outside, the city kept moving, oblivious to two people whose lives had collided by mistake and were now breaking apart because of the truth. Days slipped into weeks, and Emma threw herself into work as if exhaustion could erase the memories. She avoided the news, avoided the whispers, avoided any place where she might see Liam's face staring at her from a billboard. Yet at night, when the diner was closed and the city outside her window was quiet, she opened her sketchbook. Page after page, his image appeared. His sharp jawline, the way his eyes softened when he listened, the smile that had once made her feel seen. She hated herself for drawing him, but her hands refused to stop. One cold afternoon, as she walked home with her scarf pulled high against the wind, she noticed a flyer taped to the window of a small gallery on Main Street. Her steps slowed. The sign read, "Coming soon, the art of Emma Brooks." Her breath caught. At first she thought it was a cruel mistake, some coincidence of a shared name. But below the bold letters was one of her own sketches, enlarged and printed. She reached out, fingertips brushing the glass, her heart pounding. It was her drawing of the pond in the park, the one Liam had seen that rainy afternoon. Inside, the gallery lights glowed warm. Emma pushed the door open hesitantly. The space was empty, quiet, but along the white walls hung her work, dozens of her sketches, framed and displayed. Each one carried the weight of her late nights, her private dreams, her hidden hope. Tears blurred her vision as she turned slowly in the middle of the room. A voice broke the silence. "I promised you would have a place to hang your art." Emma spun around. Liam stood at the far end of the gallery, his suit simple, his posture unguarded. He looked at her not as the world's chief executive officer, but as a man stripped bare. Her throat tightened. "You did this?" He nodded. "I did not know how else to show you. I could buy 1,000 flowers or diamonds, but none of it would mean anything. This is real. This is what you deserve." Her anger fought with her longing. "You humiliated me, Liam. You let me believe a lie. Do you think hanging my drawings on these walls makes it disappear?" "No," he said quietly. I cannot erase the mistake I made. But I can prove that I never cared about status or image when it came to you. I cared about the girl who sat in the wrong car, the girl who dreamed even when the world told her she could not. I cared about you, Emma. Silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the gallery lights. Emma's chest ached with the weight of choice. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust again. Finally, she whispered, "If we try again, there can be no more lies. No more masks. You have to be just Liam. Not the chief executive officer. Not the millionaire. Just you." Relief flickered across his face. He stepped closer, not daring to touch her yet. "Then that is who I will be." For the first time since the gala, Emma allowed a small smile to rise through her tears. The gallery walls surrounded them, not with wealth or pretense, but with the raw proof of who she was. And for once, she felt like maybe she was enough. The evening of the gallery's official opening arrived, and Emma stood in the center of the room, surrounded by faces she never imagined would gather for her. The white walls glowed under soft lights, every sketch she had once hidden in her apartment now framed with care. Guests admired the drawings, sipping glasses of wine, their voices a low hum of praise. For the first time in her life, Emma did not feel invisible. Jenny brushed past with a grin. "Do you see this? They are all here because of you." Emma shook her head, still overwhelmed. "Because of the art," she whispered. But deep down she knew the truth because Liam had believed when she could not. A hush fell over the room as Liam stepped forward. He wore no tie, no boardroom armor, just a simple suit. He stopped at the center, his eyes only on her. "I want to say something," he began, his voice carrying through the gallery. "This exhibition is called The Art of Emma Brooks. But what you see on these walls is more than art. It is courage. It is resilience. It is proof that dreams matter, no matter how small or impossible they seem." Emma's chest tightened as he turned to her fully. "And tonight," he continued, pulling a small box from his pocket, "I want to ask you the most important question of my life." Gasps rose from the crowd. Emma's hands flew to her mouth as he knelt before her, opening the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Emma Brooks," he said, his voice steady but his eyes vulnerable. "The best mistake of my life was the night you thought I was your driver. That mistake changed everything. It brought me to you. And now I want every day of my life to be filled with the same honesty, the same laughter, and the same hope you carry in your heart. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision. The room around her faded, leaving only him. She thought of the diner, the long nights, the sketchbook she had clung to like a lifeline. She thought of the lies, the hurt, and the pain of betrayal. But more than that, she thought of the man who had chosen to strip away all the walls and stand before her as nothing more than himself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I will." The gallery erupted in applause. Liam slid the ring onto her finger, then rose and pulled her into his arms. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt safe, seen, and whole. Later, when the noise settled and only a few close friends remained, Emma stood before her favorite sketch, the one of the park bench on a rainy day. Liam wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Funny," she said softly, leaning into him. "The night I made the worst mistake, I found the best thing." Liam kissed her temple, his voice a whisper meant only for her. "The best mistake we ever made." Oh, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by walls that held her dreams, Emma knew she had not just found love. She had found justice, dignity, and a future where her art and her heart would finally be free.